can actually hear in somebody's voice when they call you that they're getting pretty overwhelmed.
Absolutely. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of anger sometimes. There's a lot of distress within the family, people in conflict. There are just a lot of things emotions that people have to deal with.
And when one feels overwhelmed, you're not able to really cope very well and use your kind of traditional coping mechanisms to deal with the stress. And then what happens when you reach that threshold of feeling overwhelmed, which is the subjective experience of what happens then, is that you feel like you're lacking in the resources to know what to do, what's your priorities, what kind of strategy you need to be able to figure out what needs to happen first. And consequently, then you just start to shut down.
So what's the first step that you take as professionals to help work through these difficult feelings?
Well, the first thing that's most important for everyone is to feel that when they're talking to us, either in person or on the phone, that there's someone on the other side of the line that acknowledges that what they're experiencing and feeling is very normal, and that there's a way out. When people reach a place of being overwhelmed, they're not able to access their kind of traditional day-to-day resources to be able to figure out how to solve the problems that they're having to confront and deal with.
It's a matter of setting priorities. A lot of people have come into the office and sat down almost in tears, feeling so stressed because they had so many different things to do and didn't even know where to start.
Often they haven't been close to their parents for some time. There may be a long history of conflicts that existed between them and their parents. They may not be the best adult child, to deal with mom or dad, but often it's the one that's geographically closest to mom or dad that often is kind of elected to be the one on the scenes to deal with the healthcare problems, the legal problems, the money problems, whatever it is.
And so there's oftentimes resentment on top of all that.
There's resentment, and there's this long history that plays into their ability to be good advocates. And if they were advocating for their neighbor or someone in their community without the emotional baggage and history, it'd be a whole different thing. But this is mom or dad, who I never could make happy, I never was good enough for, and now all of a sudden it's clear that they're not able to be capable to take care of themselves, and I've got to step in and be responsible.
There's no manual that tells you how to take care of your parents when they start to get old and their health starts to fail or their mind starts to fail. And there's no operating instructions set that comes to you in the mail the minute you are called to action to be the one responsible. So people struggle. They don't have an easy place to get information. That's why we're here.
I can speak to the question about how to deal with immediately stepping into action as a caregiver in my own experience in doing that. Let's take a couple days ago as the most prime and fresh example. My wife and I are at lunch. My cell phone rings. And I notice that on the cell phone, it's my mother's cell phone that's calling. So I pick up the phone and I say, "Hello, Mom," and there's a male voice on the other end. The man identifies himself as an emergency medic who's on the scene. My mother is unconscious, and he's calling me to let me know that they're there and that my mother is coming to, but her speech is slurred and garbled, and that they're trying to evaluate her and determine what they're going to do next. My mother lives 500 miles from where I do. I was having a nice lunch. I wasn't worried about Mom. So now all of a sudden I have to step into action and figure out what is the likely scenario of what's going to happen next to an 86-year-old woman living by herself who's now fallen and went unconscious in her community.
Now, fortunately, the woman sitting next to you, who you probably were having lunch with at the time,
Right.
has a bit of a medical background, and so your brain moved into nurse mode, I imagine.
It did, and I think the first thing I needed to do was talk to the paramedic or ask some more questions, and to get someone else over to the hospital so that we could get a better read. Sometimes when a person faints, passes out, they'll wake up a little groggy and their speech will be garbled a little bit, but it clears up because the problem was very temporary. That's quite different, of course, from a stroke, which may leave them not able to speak. But we needed to get more information. But I could see Mikol's manner completely changing in an instant. He began to worry. He's not especially a worrier. He had clients to see after lunch. We both had appointments. There were things to keep us busy. And at the same time, we had to pay attention to what was going on, make sure that someone could get there to be with his mom, and find out, if we could, what needed to happen next. Was it truly an emergency that was life-threatening? Did we need to get on a plane? Was there some help we needed to recruit to assist us right then? Was she in danger? It was very frightening and very upsetting, and combined with the responsibilities of everyday life, I think that's what a lot of people go through. They get overwhelmed because everything is happening at once.
So you did something that you would suggest to your clients do, which is to step back for an instant and take a look at, to get the most information as you possibly can. And in a way, you started to activate a support system, even if they were people who you didn't know, people who could provide you the information that you needed to have so that you could make appropriate decisions about what you needed to do.
Yes, and I'm trained not to panic. That's what nurses are trained to do. We're educated about how to set priorities, how to figure out what the most important thing to do first is, and then to act. And that's what I was trying to do to help him. One of the first things I did was call some of his mother's friends, because fortunately we're close enough to her, and we try to follow our own advice about making sure we have the information to care for an aging parent from a distance. And one of those things is to have handy the telephone numbers of some contacts who live nearby, some good friends. And so we called them and asked them if they would get out to the hospital, and they did. But I think one thing that I would recommend for people, so that they don't feel this horrible sense of helplessness from a distance when something does go wrong, is to make sure that they know at least several people who can visit their loved one and be a reporter to you about what's happening, because you can't get there fast enough.
And if you can't have family, friends, or neighbors that are able to step up and be available, I think the other wonderful resource that most people don't know about is the notion of being able to hire what's called a geriatric care manager. Often these people are trained as nurses or have background in social work, but they're available 24/7, and that's a godsend for people that are caring for their parents who live far away, that they have an independent resource. If they can't get a neighbor or whoever available to help, that they can get this independent resource that'll step into action right away, who will then be an advocate and can really be the eyes and ears for you, which is so critical and is a very helpful aspect of reducing your level of being overwhelmed.
Now let's change the topic just a little bit to that non-emergency mode, but rather that you spent 3 hours last week on the phone with your mom. This week it seems to have doubled. You're sensing that her capacities are not what they were, and you're beginning to feel a need to do something.
There reaches a time when people feel that they can't do anymore. They're just trying to stay above water and cope with all of what they're dealing with, particularly in this more difficult, challenging economic time, and they don't need heaped on their plate another responsibility. If you're blessed and you have siblings, that it doesn't have to be all your responsibility, that there's a way to work out and share this responsibility with other siblings.
It seems that there's usually one person who has a great sense of responsibility and is competent in a lot of families. There's one person who stands out as being the most capable. And it isn't that the others aren't capable at all. Well, sometimes that happens. But there's just this person who's the person I call the one. And the one has to be the initiator of everything. They're the ones who would seek advice from us. They're the ones who would hire the kind of help that might be necessary. They're the ones who will initiate the discussion about getting the elder into a facility if caring for him or her at home has become completely too much for the family. And that person is often very overwhelmed and overburdened.
It seems like there's a universal truth that if your father dies and your mom's alone and you're the son, that there's a familial responsibility to take care of mom. That's what Dad probably said on his deathbed. Make sure you take care of mom. Even though you want to share that responsibility with your sister or other siblings, sometimes you're not able to do that because you're trying to honor the responsibility that Dad left you with before he died about doing your best to take care of mom.
If you're feeling overwhelmed, acknowledge it and get help.
Absolutely. I think a lot of the time that we spend with people is encouraging them to get help, helping them understand how to do that, and giving them information about the resources that exist. And there are many, in most communities, many resources to help people. But again, there's no operator's manual about being a caretaker for aging parents, so people don't know how to find these so easily.
Although there is a book right on this website.
Yes, The Boomer's Guide to Aging Parents. It's a how-to, and it is somewhat of an instruction manual about a lot of these issues.
And you wrote that book.
Yes, I did.
Why did you write it?
A lot of people were coming to us with questions, and I noticed that there were recurring themes. So I started to write things down, and before I knew it, I had a chapter, and then one led to another. But I also knew that not everyone could afford to pay a lawyer, so I wanted to make the information more available to people. And it's necessary information because I keep handing it out in person still, but a lot of it is capsulized in the book.
This situation of becoming caregivers for our aging parents is not an area of which we ever study in school. It's not a class that you take in college. And furthermore, it's not something that we do in our culture as far as planning ahead.
And let's be honest, we don't want to do it.
No question about it. Who wants that burden? And what it also does is it makes us reflect on our own mortality. And that's a pretty scary thing to do.
On the other hand, if you're taking on the responsibility and you have kids and your kids see you doing this, that gives you a certain amount of confidence, hopefully, that
We're hoping our kids learn from us all the time. I'm giving them the book to read now.
That's right. That's right.
Thank you for watching Overcoming the Feeling of Being Overwhelmed About Aging and Aging Parents. If you need more help with overcoming the feeling of being overwhelmed, feel free to visit our website at agingparents.com. To watch more helpful videos, click here to subscribe, or watch another video. Also, check us out on Facebook or on Twitter. Thanks again for watching.